After the kissing photo of Nick and the junior sister was leaked, he explained to me nonchalantly. It was just a bar game. If you have to take it seriously, then I can't help it. After that, I never asked him about his scandals again. Until the news of him cheating with the junior sister in a hotel came out, he rarely took the initiative to call me and explain. At that time, I was sitting on his brother's lap kissing. The man held my chin, smiling gently. He's looking for you now. Does he want me to kill him? Nick suddenly became furious. Who are you with? Your brother. Seeing the kissing photo of Nick with someone else, I hurried to the bar. The atmosphere froze when I pushed open the door. Nick was sitting at a fading light, smoking. The girl sitting next to him was the female protagonist in the photo, Peggy. My boyfriend is kissing someone else, shouldn't I come and see? I walked over and placed my phone in front of Nick. He glanced at it nonchalantly and smiled. It's just a game. If you have to take it seriously, then I can't help it. Peggy sat close to Nick, her voice sweeter than her name. Irene is too conservative. Nick and I were just visually misplaced due to a game. I didn't respond to her words. She seemed a bit awkward. Nick sneered and casually threw the lighter he had been playing with onto the table. What are you doing here? People in the bar started murmuring blame. Finally, Nick's brother came out to apologize and pulled me to sit down. The atmosphere became lively again. But this time, the game was on me. Now you have to choose the closest guy to you and kiss him. The guy speaking gave me a flirty look and gestured towards Nick on my left. But on my right was another guy. Everyone was sure I would kiss Nick, including him. Nick sat there calmly swaying his glass, with a mischievous smile on his lips, not looking at me. As I was feeling the pressure, the guy on my right, with silver hair, suddenly smiled and leaned towards my ear. I won't really kiss you, just a misplacement. Are you going to continue being awkward like this? I hesitated. As I started to lean towards him, a hand forcefully took my shoulder and pulled me into a strong embrace. Nick stared at the silver-haired guy. Don't you know she's my girlfriend? The guy shrugged. So what? You have a girlfriend and still kissed someone else? Before Nick's expression darkened completely, several people came over to defuse the situation. Irene, if you want to use other guys to deliberately make me jealous, I can tell you clearly, it's not going to happen. Nick let go of me and snickered. I looked at him. Then why did you stop me from kissing him? Nick leaned closer. Like teasing a cat, he brushed his cheek against mine and sneered, I can see the reluctance in your eyes overflowing. I know your conservative nature. Would you really kiss a stranger? I saw the glitter of contempt in his eyes. His nonchalant attitude made me even more frustrated. I couldn't help but clutch my skirt. I realized I was living in the stereotype of a bookish girl in their eyes. For a moment, I wanted to act indifferent, to confidently kiss the stranger on my right and show Nick up. But maybe, as they said, I was a bit conservative. I couldn't do it. The next moment, Nick was asked to do the next challenge. Nick, you have to share a cookie stick with the girl on your left, and it must be less than 1 cm. On his left was Peggy. Nick didn't even look up. He bit into the cookie stick, pressed against Peggy's blushing cheek. This time, I saw it clearly. Although it was close, he didn't actually kiss her. But it didn't matter. Amid the laughter and teasing from the crowd, I quietly left. As soon as I left the bar, I texted Nick to break up. At that moment, I didn't realize that Nick hadn't seen that message. The night rain was drizzling. I walked back to school, feeling more and more drowsy. I felt suffocated and oxygen-deprived, like in the sweltering summer heat. It dawned on me that I had accidentally drunk someone else's spiked drink. Sitting on the roadside trying to regain my senses, a dark black car pulled up in front of me. The door opened. Through the misty rain, I looked up at the person inside, rambling nonsensically. Brother, can you blow some air conditioning on me? The man got out of the car and helped me inside. The face, somewhat resembling Nick's, belonged to his half-brother, Michael. I instinctively called him brother, just because I had called Nick that before. but he just glanced at me briefly and didn't respond. "What do you need me to do?" I sat on his lap, holding onto his neck, feeling lost. Michael suggested, caressing my chin lightly. "Why not try kissing first?" I held onto my last shred of sanity. "Would this be immoral, brother?" I found myself sitting on his lap, asking such a question. "Let me help you," he said. My last defense crumbled when I remembered I was single again. It felt like a long DIY class, with Michael being an excellent teacher helping me solve the problem. I had heard my roommate say once, "Irene, this pleated skirt sways like an umbrella. The handle dances under the umbrella, concealing the hidden urgent rain." In the end, the teacher seemed satisfied and asked me with interest, "Shall I go learn piano, play for you alone? Is that good?" I was almost absent-minded, wanting to tell him he was indeed suited to play the piano. But I had seen enough of his performance 3 times that day. The next day, as the first rays of sunlight hit the earth, I realized what I had done. Michael had taken me home. After mentally drafting my thoughts, I gathered the courage to explain to Michael. "Good morning," the man's voice was warm. But my feet froze in place. He was sitting on the couch, leisurely cleaning his personal firearm. "Mr. Michael, I would like to discuss with you." The next moment, the man seemed to cock the gun. "Mr. Michael?" He smiled gently. "Didn't you call me brother before?" I shuddered. "Let me guess what you want to say," he said calmly, toying with the gun that could potentially end my life. Michael chuckled lightly, his voice slow but inexplicably chilling. "It's not going to be to pretend that nothing happened, is it?" His hand was already on the trigger. "Have you ever seen the fate of someone who doesn't want to take responsibility?" I felt like my life was hanging by a thread. Cold sweat dripped from my palms uncontrollably. I will take responsibility. I shouldn't have provoked this madman." Michael finally put down the extremely dangerous object in his hand. He walked over and lifted me up, sitting on the couch while I quivered on his lap. "Now, make the call to break up with Nick, okay?" The man lightly kissed my ear. I didn't dare touch his warm ear, only whispered softly to him. "I broke up with him last night." Michael looked momentarily stunned, then placed his hand on my waist. "Good girl. Then all of this is unnecessary." I then noticed the belts and chains on the nearby coffee table. I closed my eyes, feeling desolate. Is this like jumping from a fire pit straight into hell? I was forced to have a boyfriend in order to be allowed back to school. As I walked into the classroom in a daze, I happened to hear Nick's voice. "Irene seemed quite angry when she left yesterday. Nick, you should pacify her later." Nick's voice was calm. "Do I need to pacify her?" "Give her some time, she'll come around on her own." I didn't linger and casually found a seat away from them. Before the class started, Nick, like a man possessed, hugged Peggy and sat in the seat in front of me. To be honest, I didn't feel much. After all, I had just experienced a life and death situation this morning. "Nick, thank you for helping me over. It's because of my low blood sugar and I almost fainted. Trouble for you. I hope it won't cause misunderstandings." Peggy looked fragile, barely able to support herself as she pulled away from Nick's embrace. Nick chuckled lightly. "Just helping a friend. Who is this backward nowadays? Seeing others hug and immediately assuming there's something going on." Then I felt like Nick slightly turned his head in my direction. It turns out Peggy wasn't with Nick. I didn't delve into the meaning of their words, as it didn't concern me. I just pondered over Nick's last words. I wonder if he thinks his brother is too conservative. Holding a gun to make me take responsibility, Irene. Peggy suddenly turned back and blinked her innocent eyes. "I heard you didn't go back to the dorm last night. Why?" Nick suddenly looked up, a chilling coldness in his eyes. "You didn't go back to the dorm?" Peggy quickly continued, "Yeah, Nick, don't you know? She didn't go back because she got into a fight with you and went to see another man, right?" She then quickly added, "I just asked casually, no ill intentions." Nick stared at me, clenching his fists until his knuckles turned white. After a few seconds of looking at both of them, I calmly nodded. I was indeed with another man last night, and we even kissed. Isn't this what they wanted to hear? As soon as the words left my mouth, Nick burst into laughter. He relaxed his shoulders again, raised an eyebrow. Irene, didn't I tell you before? Trying to make me jealous with another man, you won't be able to do that in your lifetime. My words held no credibility for Nick. If I beat around the bush, he might have some doubts. Now, he just treats my words as a joke. I was worried that publicly disclosing my relationship with Michael too early would lead to more trouble. The only condition I proposed to Michael was to keep our relationship secret. Unexpectedly, this led to more trouble. On that day of the campus exhibition, Michael was invited as a guest to our school. I was informed by the counselor that Michael designated me as his presenter, following him all day for presentations. Unfortunately, at noon, I ran into Nick and Peggy. Michael, why is Irene your presenter? Michael raised an eyebrow slightly. Is there a problem? Nick looked on with scrutiny but didn't probe further. Instead, he said, it's lunchtime, let's eat together. Peggy chimed in timely, Nick, can I come along? She tugged at his sleeve. Nick frowned, seeming to want to refuse. But as he started to speak, he glanced at me standing aside. I remained unfazed. What does it have to do with me? The next moment, Nick's expression changed. He chuckled lightly, sure, why not? Do you guys have any objections? While he was addressing me and Michael, his gaze was fixed on me. As soon as I finished speaking, I got into Michael's car. I was prepared for Peggy's mischief, but the two of them had no boundaries. The restaurant had 4 seats. Peggy walked straight to Nick and showed an innocent smile. Nick, I'm only a little closer to you. Can I sit with you? I sighed at her words, feeling a bit conflicted. Can't I sit by myself at a different table? When I looked up again, I met Nick's eyes. He seemed like a lunatic, his facial expressions changing from a serious face to a mysterious smile. Nick didn't immediately agree, seeming to be in a good mood. He raised his chin towards me. Ask her. I didn't bother to respond and simply sat next to Michael. I thought I would just watch Peggy's performance the whole time. Until, in utter boredom, the hand hanging under the table was held. I stopped chewing on the broccoli immediately. I dared not even blink my eyes. The warm touch in my palm came from Michael sitting calmly next to me. Michael, your hands are so beautiful. Peggy suddenly mentioned Michael, showing a sweet dimple on her face. Ignoring her comment, Michael merely separated my fingers from under the table and intertwined our hands. I was tense, stiff all over. Peggy didn't relent and continued. Watching you play, like a pianist, do you play the piano? Michael gave her an unusual glance. I have. He added lightly, 3 times. I coughed out instantly, as if choked by the scent of lavender. For a moment, the eyes of the other 3 people at the table focused on me. Michael, with his free hand, poured me a cup of hot water. Thank you. I took the opportunity to free my hand and drink the water. Nick frowned when he saw it. Can you slow down a bit? I ignored him and made an excuse to go to the bathroom to take a break. But just as I reached the sink, the person behind me pressed me against his chest. I haven't seen you in a week. The man's warm breath gently brushed against my neck. I looked at myself in the mirror, feeling at a loss and blushing. Would someone come? Not. Michael and I in the mirror locked eyes. He then turned me around and faced me. The man raised his hand and caressed my cheek. As he closed the distance, he softly asked, "Can we go public yet?" I hesitated, with my hand on his shoulder. Michael's tone remained gentle. It's okay, I respect you. Just as I sighed in relief, I was threatened once again. Michael casually played with my hand, rubbing and kneading it slowly, as if chatting. Can you try to be quick, okay? You don't want me to lose patience and use those things, right? Thinking of what I saw that day, I couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. Perhaps Peggy had found us because Michael and I hadn't returned for too long. Michael? The approaching footsteps made me panic. What do we do? I looked up, watching Michael, who remained calm. Finally, just before Peggy came in, Michael led me to hide in a nearby, inconspicuous corner. "Michael, are you there?" I kept a close eye on Peggy's movements, trying to avoid her discovering us. But at this moment, Michael was still carefree and joking. "She doesn't call you sweetie as I do." I didn't react in time. I blinked. "What did she call me?" Michael cornered me in the narrow corner and asked with lowered eyes. I instinctively replied, "Brother." He smiled and gave a soft "hm." I then realized it was intentional. The little spark of hope that had just ignited was extinguished under Michael's deeply affectionate gaze. I had to admit, this occasionally eccentric guy was indeed handsome and attractive. This unknown flutter led Michael to drop us off at the school gate before leaving. I still stared absent-mindedly in the direction he left. "Not willing to part with your brother?" Nick's mocking voice brought me back to reality. He tilted my chin up, forcing me to look straight at him. "Let me tell you, you don't stand a chance with him. He already likes someone. Although I've never seen her, I know she's not your average, ordinary girl like you." I immediately pushed away his hand, taking out a tissue to wipe where he had touched. Nick's voice turned menacing. "Do you think I'm dirty?" No need to answer that, right? I felt uncomfortable being in the same space as Nick now. As I left, I pondered his words. Michael likes someone. Perhaps because my mind was single-minded in this situation. I self-centeredly thought that maybe the person he liked was me. Just as I was planning to find the right moment to ask Michael, he took the initiative to approach me. I was walking by the playground, studying vocabulary. When I reached the gate, I saw Michael had just gotten out of his car. My brain froze for a moment, and I took off my earphones and ran towards him. "Why didn't you tell me you were coming to find me?" I complained as I pulled his sleeve and led him to a secluded spot. Michael followed a few steps and then held my wrist from behind. With a faint smile on his lips, the man seemed somewhat helpless. "I came to talk about the donation matters." I stood still, feeling awkward in the cold wind. "You didn't come to find me?" To outsiders, it seemed like I was forcefully holding on to Michael. Obviously, nearby Peggy thought the same. Irene seems quite interested. "Both Nick and Michael, do you want them?" She walked over with a smile, hands behind her back. However, from a distance, it was obvious that Michael was a bit repulsed by you. "Irene, do you like Michael?" She nodded, as I had expected. After thinking for a few seconds, I decided to play the role of a teacher. "If you like me, you can pursue me, but don't threaten me. Pursuing a girl like this will only backfire." Although he mostly just talked the talk and didn't really do anything extreme, Michael seemed to have taken it to heart. After a few moments of contemplation, he finally spoke up. "All right, I won't do anything you dislike. So, how should I go about pursuing you if I can't do those things?" The question was too direct, leaving the teacher speechless. With flushed cheeks, I told him firmly, "Consider this your self-study course." When I went downstairs to the dorm, I wasn't surprised to see Nick there. I needed to confront him. "Why did you tell Peggy that we broke up?" He exploded as soon as I approached. I found it all very puzzling. We were already broken up. You were the one spreading rumors that I was still your girlfriend. Nick genuinely seemed unaware. I showed him the breakup text message on my phone. "I informed you already." Nick's expression darkened, and he showed me his phone messages as well. "I never received it." "Irene, if I had known, I wouldn't have agreed. I've been waiting for you to calm down all this time, but I never thought about breaking up with you." I calmly retrieved my phone. "Well, now you know. I don't like you anymore, and persisting like this is pointless." Nick furrowed his brows and blocked my path. "You don't like me anymore? Turning on me so quickly? Is it because of Michael? Have you moved on to him?" Nick's grip on my shoulder was painful. "Have you two already gotten together? Irene, when did you become so cheap?" With his final word echoing in the air, I finally broke free and slapped him hard. Is being scum like you the norm? You're already a rotten cucumber. What right do you have to judge others? The air around him felt suffocating. I walked past him and headed straight for the dorm. Just as I was about to enter, a cold laugh suddenly came from behind me. Irene, by breaking up with me, you've lost any chance of reconciliation. You should know, Nick, never lack women. Initially, I breathed a sigh of relief, finally having rid myself of Nick. But the reality was different. After that, I started seeing Nick in almost every class. He would be cozying up to Peggy, acting intimate, yet never formally acknowledging their relationship. Sometimes in class, I'd get so irritated by those two pests. Michael, on the other hand, became my source of balance. He was awkwardly adorable, pursuing me like he was following a manual. Such as buying an entire trunk of flowers. Why buy so many? I asked, confused. Michael explained, I didn't know which one you'd like, and asking you directly wouldn't have the same surprise factor. So, I bought a few recommended by the shop. I was even more puzzled. Why couldn't you just ask me? Michael seemed to be following a strict set of rules. I checked, asking directly removes the element of surprise. I burst into laughter. Just as I was about to tease him, I looked up and found his face unexpectedly close. His eyes were locked onto mine, filled with emotions. What are you doing? I pressed my back against the car, with no room to escape. Michael's gaze lowered to my half-covered face. I want to hug you and kiss you. I softly reminded him, but we're not together yet. Michael complied gently, but didn't take his eyes off me for a second. As he continued pursuing me, the restrained Michael appeared slightly clumsy. Yet beneath that clumsiness lay genuine affection. Under the gentle evening glow, my heart skipped a beat for this Michael. In the following days, I found myself pondering a question. Just 2 months after breaking up with Nick, I found myself drawn to his brother. Did that make me someone fickle in nature? But soon, I realized that I had every right to love and be loved by someone else after a breakup. Moreover, Nick wasn't worth lingering over post-breakup. The sooner I moved on, the smaller the sunk cost I spent on him. One evening, Nick, who hadn't been seen in a while, came looking for me again. Keep your distance, or I'll call the police, I warned coldly as I spoke first. Nick didn't approach further, instead standing still helplessly. He chuckled lightly and said, "It's been a while. You've probably slept with Michael by now, right?" I smiled back. "Who I sleep with is none of your business." Nick was unperturbed, speaking calmly. "I wanted to explain to you that I didn't see the breakup message because Peggy deleted it. But now, I see you don't care either way. I came to see you today mainly to show you Michael's true colors." I cautiously remained silent. I'd heard that my father was considering a marriage alliance with Michael, and he must have discussed it with him. A marriage based on status and wealth, compared to someone insignificant like you, who do you think he'd choose? Before I could grasp his words, Nick opened a live news video and handed it to me. Michael was being interviewed. "Mr. Michael, there are rumors that you have been financially supporting a female college student, with multiple photos as evidence. What do you have to say to this?" I instantly understood Nick's earlier words. He had caught Michael off guard, forcing him to make an immediate decision. If Michael admitted to it, the prospective marriage alliance would be off, and the stock price would plummet. Although it was only a matter of seconds, to me, it felt like minutes. My hands holding the phone trembled uncontrollably. I heard Michael, in his usual calm voice, say, "It's just a rumor." Michael casually stared at the camera, his eyes distant. The reporter persisted, "In the photos, you're seen giving flowers, gifts, and picking her up. How do you explain that?" Michael remained unruffled. "I'm pursuing her." The scene erupted into chaos. Both Nick and I were frozen in shock. Michael lifted his wrist and glanced at his watch. "Is there still a problem? I have to go pick her up after class." The reporter Nick hired was dumbfounded and couldn't say a word. I kept staring at Michael until he completely disappeared from the camera, barely coming to my senses. Irene, he's just. I lost all patience with Nick and pulled out the pepper spray I had prepared from my bag, spraying wildly. Nick, stay away from me, I'm afraid of getting infected. I took the opportunity to leave. After putting the book back in my room, I went downstairs again, and Michael had just arrived. I happily bounced downstairs to him. You're late today, I lightly mentioned. Sorry, had an interview, Michael casually brushed it off. I didn't ask much more, just tilted my head and looked at him. Michael, how are you planning to woo me today? Michael followed textbook steps methodically. Some information mentioned that spending money is also a necessary process. He took out a velvet box from his pocket. It was a diamond bracelet I bought at an auction in Hong Kong a week ago. Although I didn't understand, I knew it was expensive. I took a step closer to Michael and asked nonchalantly, did the information tell you when I would say yes to you? Michael faced a super difficult problem. He looked at me in silence, but couldn't give an answer. I leaned into his arms. The pine scent mixed with a hint of tobacco hit me. Now, I answered for him. On a day without warning. I thought we would have a moment of heartfelt confession. But after a brief moment, Michael silently hugged me back. Michael, buried in his coat, I mumbled. Don't you have something to say? Michael lightly nibbled on my earlobe. It's been too long since I last held you. I just want to hug you for a while. I accepted his answer and nestled closer to him. What I initially thought was crazy and perverted turned out to be just simple love, a pitiful longing that could be satisfied with just a hug. It seems that when you like someone, you just want to be close to them. Since I didn't have afternoon classes, I went straight to Michael's house with him. As soon as I entered, I was lifted by him. My legs wrapped around his waist, I leaned down and kissed his face. I lightly kissed him and then pulled away, teasing, "Do you want more kisses?" I brushed my finger against his lower lip. Michael tightened the hand on my waist, his voice husky and dangerous. Yes. My nose against his, I continued softly, "How do you want to be kissed, boyfriend? A passionate kiss?" Michael took a deep breath, a sign of rational collapse. "Give it to me," I smiled and leaned in to kiss him. However, my kissing skills were not as proficient as my words suggested. I accidentally bit him several times, gradually losing the initiative to him. Pinning me on the couch, he kissed me fervently and silently. Just as his kisses seemed to be heading south, my phone rang at the most inappropriate time. Wait, I need to take this call. I pushed away the man buried in my neck and shoulders. It was a voice call from my roommate. Irene, I messaged you, why aren't you replying? Check Twitter quickly, Nick and Peggy hung out with you. I immediately opened phone. The top post on the school gossip feed was a photo of Nick and Peggy in a hotel. Although their faces were blurred, it was obvious what was happening. It was a post by a girl who had been previously hurt by Nick, exposing his relationship with Peggy. The post only mentioned me briefly, saying I was another victim hurt by Nick. Suddenly, a call from an unknown number interrupted. It was Nick using a different number. His voice sounded urgent. Irene, did you see Twitter? Listen, Peggy and I only had that one time, I never slept with anyone else. You're the only girlfriend I've ever admitted to. I was already being held in Michael's lap by then. He lightly pinched my chin. Is he calling to order his own death? The voice traveled through the phone line into Nick's ears. Who's talking? He roared, his voice several decibels higher. Irene. Who are you with right now? Michael, isn't it? I'm coming to find you guys right now. Losing patience, Michael grabbed my phone and hung up on Nick. He's too noisy, I agreed, nodding, and then changed positions, straddling his lap. Let's continue, I said, leaning in for another kiss. No one took Nick seriously. He wouldn't dare show his face around those he had hurt, including Peggy. But reality had more drama in store. When Nick's father heard about the incident, he felt Nick was disgracing him. He was about to send Nick away to be reared abroad. However, at that moment, Peggy showed up with a positive pregnancy test. Nick's father had a change of heart, allowing Nick to take Peggy to New Zealand for a vacation. But Nick was inherently fickle. When Peggy was 3 months pregnant, he cheated again with a foreign actress, becoming a hot topic online. Peggy, upon hearing the news, was so furious that she had a miscarriage. This time, his father didn't listen to Nick's pleas and sent him to North Africa without hesitation. It wasn't until my engagement to Michael that I saw him again. The once carefree Nick now looked as dark as a native African. Many people behind his back scorned him with a simple, "deserved it." On the other hand, Michael must have excelled academically in school. He seemed eager to take me out today. Most of my leisure time is spent with him. I shook my head and lazily nestled in his arms. I don't want to. Michael wouldn't give up. Then what do you want? I finally sat up from his arms. Brother, is this something you learned from the information? He nodded slightly. This is the advanced version, a way to improve our relationship. I smiled and teased him. You don't have to follow the book. I didn't agree to be with you because of what you learned from the materials. Michael leaned in to kiss me, sincerely asking, then, what should I do for you to like me more? I kissed him on the cheek. For now, just kiss me from time to time. Michael took my casual remark as new study material. One day, I couldn't help it. I covered his lips with my hand before he could lean in to kiss me again. Enough! I pointed to my chapped mouth. Look at this. This is all because of you. I couldn't just brush him off anymore, I had to talk seriously to him. Being in a relationship should be about being comfortable with each other, not mechanical like this. Because of my words, Michael seemed to finally break free from his chains. He reverted to the person I first met. Is this the way we both would be comfortable? The lamp shadow swayed above us. I hesitated to admit it, but Michael found ways to make me speak up. He tied a belt around our wrists. We'll always be bound together, okay? It felt like I couldn't bear to be apart from you even for a minute. Michael's low, hoarse voice carried a hint of obsession. Michael, are you a bit of a pervert? The man chuckled and admitted. In the end, he said, from the moment I saw you, I knew a long time ahead. It was because he was afraid that he restrained his dark side, learned to pursue me clumsily and naively like a normal person. That was when I found out that Michael was adopted. He was never the heir to a great fortune like Nick, who indulged in extravagant lifestyles without constraints. From being a puppet in that family to becoming the true master now, every step he took was perilous. Developing an unconventional character was never what he wished for. I trembled, embracing what felt like inevitable fate, burying myself in Michael's embrace. You don't have to hide in front of me anymore. Then, cautiously I said, but if possible, brother, let's change slowly. Being a pervert for a long time, I might not survive. Whether it was because he took my advice to heart or due to subsequent reasons, I had a peaceful sleep after that conversation. After a long time, one day while waiting for Michael to finish work and watching TV, I coincidentally caught real-time news. After many years, his private affairs were brought up again. Today is the day when a certain wealthy heiress, who is rumored to have intentions of marrying you, got engaged. It was said that because you publicly admitted having another person you loved, the marriage with her fell through. What are your thoughts on this? I immediately searched for information on that heiress on my phone. She ended up marrying her childhood sweetheart, admitting to a 7-year long-distance relationship. If there was any talk of marriage, it was clear that she was unwilling too. Michael replied nonchalantly. Congratulations on the engagement. But the current Michael seemed to exude more of an air of superiority than before. The reporter chuckled and continued to gossip. Could you please answer again, did you and your former pursuer have a resolution? Michael, in a rare instance, faced the camera head-on. At this moment, it felt as though the screen disappeared. I and Michael locked eyes from a distance. I heard the man's ever-gentle voice. She is my wife now.